and experts are now very concerned that there is growing anti-Asian sentiment because of the pandemic.
Attacks, but Australia's Human Rights Commissioner says 1/3 of race-related complaints over the last few months have been related to COVID-19.
A Geelong GP verbally abused by a woman in Hamlin Heights is the latest victim of a rise in COVID-related racist attacks.
Those clips were just a few amongst thousands of racial prejudice-fueled attacks on the Asian community around the world, due to COVID-19 and the fact that it originated in China. COVID-19 has had a major impact on society and has brought to light issues that may not have occurred if the pandemic hadn't existed. These include the influx of racist attacks towards the Asian community, hundreds of people losing their jobs, and the depletion of grocery store essential items. The well-being of communities was also greatly affected, with hundreds reporting a decline in their mental health, with 30% of people in a 1,200-person survey showing moderate to high levels of anxiety and depression due to issues relating to COVID-19. One prevalent social issue that arose from COVID-19 was a racial prejudice that Asians faced. This was seen globally, and these horrid attacks sparked fear within the Asian community. A survey conducted by the Asian Australian Alliance reported that 377 incidents of anti-Asian racism had taken place in a 2-month period. This is equivalent to 47 attacks a week. These included verbal and physical abuse, with people reporting they had been spat on and even threatened with knives. Through conducting my own survey with roughly 30 teenage participants, 54% reported that they or somebody they knew were affected by some form of racial prejudice through racial slurs and discriminatory actions, with most of them occurring on public transport. These attacks and verbal abuse often goes unreported, with law enforcement unable to trace the offender. These attacks are a result of a lack of education and ignorance. So what do we have to do to rebuild these communities that COVID has run rampant in? Well, we could start with the future, us, young adults, to spark a conversation about it. During adolescence, our minds and our worldview are still being shaped, so to change a mindset is easier than a fully developed adult. However, they are still able to discuss and comprehend confronting situations and are able to have meaningful conversations. My CSP is an interactive activity that targets young adults. It promotes the similarities within our community and that I've named The Same on the Inside. The Same on the Inside targets students in years 10 to 12 to have a mature conversation that comes from a prompt that a teacher or supervisor asks. Each time a question is asked, students will move into areas in which they agree or disagree on a continuum from one side of the room to another to answer these questions. This interactive allows people to visualize the amount of people and their stories, to put a face behind the statistics. These prompts would include some tough questions that push students to think deeply about COVID-19 and its impact. For example, if them or anyone they know contracted the virus, and most importantly how it impacted them, or if someone or they knew was a victim to racial prejudice. Students do not have to share or express their opinions if they don't feel comfortable. However, the conversation and dialogue is important to show that underneath it all, we share many similarities, even though we may appear different on the outside. After the activity is completed, students will be required to fill out a survey to give any last input and to write how they feel and reflect on the experience. This can either have their name attached or be anonymous. Sharing experiences and stories are just as important as sharing physical objects, as people are able to connect through human emotion, which helps rebuild connections in the community. By connecting and partnering with schools in the local community, then later spreading the program further, we could collate the results and see how students engage with the activity. I want to leave behind a world with reduced amount of racial prejudice and judgment, and I hope you all feel the same. And remember, we're all the same on the inside.